Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Becky if you're new, and I just went to my local butcher shop and I picked up half a cow that I ordered from a local farmer. I have been ordering beef from this farmer for the past almost 9 years, I think. I think the first year Josh and I got married, I bought from this farmer and I've been buying from him ever since. And I'm gonna break down what I got from ordering half a cow. When I first started doing this, the whole concept was very confusing to me, and I'm just gonna kind of break the steps down for you. So first we're gonna do a haul, then we're gonna go bring all this downstairs. I'm gonna organize the freezer, and at the very end, I'm gonna do the cost breakdown. Now this farmer is grass-fed, grass-finished, which is something to note, that's important to me. And I'm gonna also show you what it takes, how much freezer space it takes for half of a cow in your freezer. We are also going to do some shopping downstairs while we're downstairs. But first, let's go through this haul so that I can bring it downstairs and put it in the freezer. A little bit of how this process works is I put an order in a few months ago with my local farmer stating I wanted to purchase half a cow. You can typically, when you buy meat from local farmers, you can get quarter, half, or whole. The bigger quantity you get, usually the better price you get. So for the last 3 years, or 3 times I've bought it, I get half a cow. It has been over 2 years since I ordered half a cow, and it has lasted us that long. We ran out of steaks about a year ago, and I'm really excited to have this back in my freezer. I'll show you what I have left from the previous half a cow I got when we go downstairs. And then once the cow is butchered, then it goes off to the butcher, and you give the butcher your cutting instructions. I'm gonna leave a link to a video from the butcher boys or the butcher guys. They have a really good video. I wish it was out when I first started doing this because it really breaks down the different cuts you can get, and I will go through that as I go through this. I have a total of 385 pounds here. So let's start with the good stuff, the stuff that I ran out a long time ago, and that is the steaks. So I'm gonna go through what I chose to get for my cuts and what are some of the other options you can get when ordering half of a cow. And one thing to note, I ordered half a cow, so I got 1/2 of the cow, either the right side or left side, I don't know which. But if you do order a quarter of a cow, you're not getting the front end or the back end, you're getting a half of the front and a half of the back. So I'm gonna show you what you get from a half a cow, but if you were to get a quarter cow, you have all the same cutting options, you would just get half of the amount of them. I hope that makes sense. So for example, this first thing, this is what I ran out of first. I ran out of New York steaks, and I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I have 14 New York steaks. Most butchers will let you either have them packaged in 1, 2, 3, or 4 steaks per package. I choose to have mine packaged in 2, and usually you get to request how thick you want your steaks. I like them about 1 inch thick. I like a nice thick steak. And so if you were to order a quarter of a cow, instead of getting all of these, you would get half of these New York steaks. And then same with all these other cuts. You would have the option for all of these cuts, you would just get half of what you see here. Now another thing I got this time, and this is different than what I got last time, is I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 ribeye steaks. Ribeye steaks are the same as a prime rib roast. If you have that piece of meat whole, you're gonna get a prime rib. If you have it cut into slices, those are ribeye steaks. This is what was very confusing to me when I first started buying meat from local farmers, where all the different cuts have different names depending on how they are treated. And the more you do this, the more comfortable you will get with it, and the more you will learn what you like. The one big thing I have learned when having meat butchered from local farmers is just because it's on the cutting sheet, a butcher will give you a cutting sheet that's the most typical cuts, is you might not want to request all of those because you don't typically buy them and you don't know how to cook with them, and they will end up in the bottom of your freezer, and you will then have to do a pantry challenge to use up those pieces of meat. So typically what I do now is I look at what I like to buy at the grocery store, and I ask my butcher to butcher those cuts. Now last year, or 2 years ago when I did this, I wanted the ribeye roast because I wanted to do that for Christmas. But because we ran out of steaks so quickly last time, I wanted more steaks this time. And when it comes to Christmas, if we do a big Christmas dinner at my family's house, we still have to supplement with a store-bought rib roast. So I figured I'll just go ahead and get steaks this time. And then maybe next time I do this, I'll want a ribeye roast. One thing you're not gonna see on this table is a T-bone steak. And that's because if you want a T-bone steak, then you can't get a tenderloin roast and you won't get separate New Yorks. A T-bone steak is a New York on one side, and then there's a T-bone, and then it is part of the tenderloin. It's two different cuts. And so because I wanted the New Yorks and I wanted the tenderloin, I don't get T-bones, and I'm okay with that because I don't really enjoy cooking T-bone steaks. I feel like they're a little finicky. These are 3 of my favorite cuts. You only get 1, or I guess in my case, I got 2. I thought you only got 1. Well, maybe the other half of this cow did not want this cut. This typically is turned into ground beef if you don't request it, and that is a skirt steak. This is a very tough cut of meat, but it makes the best beef tacos. You marinate it, you cook it on a high heat, and it is delicious. Same with flank steak. Typically, this is not gonna be on a cut sheet, the sheet that the butcher gives you where you can put your cutting instructions. So if you want these, you usually need to request them or they will turn them into ground beef. They have no problem saving them and putting them aside for you if you want them. So out of my half a cow, those are the only steaks we got because I wanted that in a roast form. And then over here, you're gonna see a lot of chuck roast. Chuck roast is my favorite roast to slow cook in the slow cooker and turn into shredded beef. That's what I have going over there right now. Actually, I have that's pork right now, but 2 days ago, or last week I did a chuck roast. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 chuck roasts. These chuck roasts are about 3 to 4 pounds each, depending on how much bone and thing is in them. Typically, when you have your roast cut, they will let you choose how many pounds you want in each package. This seems to be a good quantity for us. You can do bigger roasts, but we don't need bigger roasts. It's not that much actual meat once it cooks down in shreds because most of them have a pretty good size bone in them, which makes for great flavor. And this just falls apart beautifully in a slow cooker. I like to slow cook chuck roast. I can see my steaks are getting warmer than I'd like, so I'm gonna go throw those in the freezer and then we'll be back to finish this. I will show you what all this looks like downstairs in my freezer because we need to do a little bit of organizational down there. And I will also sanitize my counter when all said and done. These are gonna go in the freezer. I'll be right back to finish showing you what all we got here. So the last thing we talked about are the chuck roasts. Now, this is a rump roast. I don't remember requesting this, but I'm excited to have it. It's another cut of meat that's gonna be super tough. So chuck roast, rump roast, really tough cuts of meat. Lots of connective tissue, and if you try to cook them on the stove quickly or grill them, they don't make for very good eats. You really need to cook them low and slow for 8, 10 hours. And so that's what I will do with these pieces of meat. What is this one? Oh, okay. Looks like I got 2 rump roasts. Maybe what I'll do with these is I will try making homemade, I've never done it before, roast beef for roast beef sandwiches. I think that's the kind of meat you use for that. I'll have to do more research. Now what you're not gonna see, maybe it's round roast. I don't ever buy round roasts. Those are another cut of part of the beef that's really tough that typically you wanna slow cook until it's nice and shred apart tender. But I have a harder time with that because it doesn't have as much of the connective tissue and it usually doesn't have a bone in it. So what I usually do with those, because I want more ground beef, is I have the round roasts turned into ground beef. You can have them into roast, or you can have them cut into stew meat. Another thing you're not gonna see here is stew meat. That's where the butcher will take time to cut them into about 1-inch cubes. I don't make stew hardly ever, and when I want a chuck roast that I want to turn into a beef stew, like what is that one where you cook it in red wine all day with the mushrooms and all that? I can't remember the name of that recipe, but it's a French recipe and it's delicious. What I will do is I will just take one of these chuck roasts out of the freezer, let it thaw, and I will cut it into stew meat. I just didn't want that already in stew meat because I rarely make stew. So that was one thing I did not request that most butchers will have on their cut sheet. And remember, there's no wrong or right answer. It's just what would best serve your family. Now here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 soup bones. And these are different than the bones. I do request the bones as well. The soup bones tend to have a lot more meat on it, but they also make really, really good broth. Before we get to the ground beef, I do want to count that and see how many pounds of ground beef we have. I have a lot more ground beef this time than I did last time. Another reason is because I did not request the brisket. I have always requested the brisket, and I have found I don't really like brisket that much. So typically what I end up doing with the brisket is gifting it to a family member, and they end up cooking it for a family dinner typically. And this time I just said, no brisket, turn that into ground beef. So any of the cuts that you don't want, you can have turned into ground beef. You could have the entire half a cow or quarter of a cow turned into ground beef if you wanted to. If your family doesn't eat steak and enjoy steak and all you enjoy is ground beef, have the whole thing turned into ground beef. That's the beauty, is you have control over what cuts you want. Now, this is something I request that if you do not request, it gets thrown in the garbage. When you buy meat from a local farmer, you actually own the cow before it gets butchered. And so they don't have the rights to sell it to somebody else. So if you don't request it, the organs, which is what we're gonna go over next, they get thrown in the garbage. I freeze dry the organs and I turn it into dog food, and they go crazy for it. These first 2 packages are livers. So not right now, maybe, I don't know. I will thaw these, I will cut them, I will freeze dry them, and my dogs get at least 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of liver every day. Same with the heart. I will thaw this, cube it, and freeze dry it as a dog treat. Now this right here is the cow tongue. Josh and I don't enjoy this. I know so many of you love your cow tongue tacos. It is not our favorite. So what I do is I keep this because this is a very high-end piece of beef that now costs a lot of money because a lot of people really enjoy it. So I have a family friend who loves this, and so I gift it to her. I just gift her the cow tongue. She's happy to have it, and I'm happy that she's happy. So this weekend, that will find a new home and it will be greatly enjoyed. Now here I have 1, 2, 3 packages of kidney fat. Now this is the fat that is around the kidney of the cow. It's also called like the leaf tallow, and it is the cleanest fat off the cow. And I will render this down and we will cook with it, or I'll turn it into soap or something like that. I'm not sure what. You can actually request even more of the fat if you want and render that down. I did not do that because I have a freezer full of probably another 50 pounds of pork fat, and we use pork fat more than we use tallow. So I just requested this beautiful leaf lard, or this tallow, and you can turn this into beauty products and things like that too if you want. And then I didn't request all of the fat because I know that would just sit in my freezer because I have enough lard in my freezer. So at some point this winter, I will be doing a big rendering day. So now I'm gonna go ahead and count up this ground beef. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 134 pounds. That amount of ground beef will last us a very long time. I do also bring a lot of this beef. If you've watched any of the cooking adventures my mom and I have had when we do big cooking days, I will bring the beef if beef is needed in recipes. And so this will serve my family really well, and it'll serve my loved ones as well because I do a lot of cooking for people. And I'm really excited to have this back in my freezer because my beef freezer is getting very low, and you will see that in just a minute. Oh, I have another big bag of bones here. I could request even more bones than this. These are bones that have lots of marrow, and they're actually really, really good. They could be broth bones. You could cut them in half if you have a saw, and you could make a bone marrow appetizer. Those bones, more likely than not, are gonna be for the dogs. They do have some fat on them. They have some meat a little bit on them. They're not as meaty as the soup bones, and they have a lot of marrow and just goodness for my dogs. So my dogs will enjoy those. They will also, some of them, be turned into broth. I get the question a lot of why do I use chicken broth so much as opposed to beef broth. And that's because I actually like the flavor of chicken broth better. And so a lot of times when a recipe calls for beef broth, I will use chicken broth. And the only beef broth that I have made up right now are in quarts. And so if a recipe calls for a smaller amount, like a cup or two of broth, I'm more likely to open up my pint of chicken broth and just substitute it and use it instead of opening up a whole quart of beef broth. So I haven't decided yet what those bones are gonna be for. They'll probably sit in my freezer. I'll probably dole them out to my dogs. And when I do a big broth making day, I will pull out the soup bones and pull out what I have left, and make a bunch of broth. So now this stuff needs to get put into the freezer. And then once I get all of this downstairs and in the freezer, I will clean off my counter here. Hopefully I did my ground beef math correct. Oh, I have gloves that I'm gonna put on. If I didn't, let me know, but I'm pretty sure I did that math correct. Sometimes doing math on the spot, it ends up being off, but it's close to that number. I'm gonna grab the liver and that beef, the ground meat, because the liver is most likely to thaw the quickest. This is gonna take a while. So this right here is basically almost all ground beef. So let me show you what it looks like right now. There are a couple other things in here as well than ground beef. So here you can see I have an empty spot right here. This is where my steaks typically go, which are in that container. So we're gonna get those in here. I have just a few roasts left from last year. I actually have a few more roasts than I thought. But what I don't have any of is steaks, and here are the steaks. These are just from now. And then I have a few pounds of, this is tallow and lard that I rendered. That's why I didn't request all of that, because this is what I already have rendered and I have more that I need to render. But this right here is the ground beef I have. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17 pounds of ground beef. And then this was a gift. My sister gifted me the gift of some ribs. And then I have some random pieces of pork in here and a whole thing of bacon. So what I'm gonna do is put this over here, and I'm gonna start organizing this as I bring things down. So I wanna do the first in, first out rule. So I typically organize my deep freezers with these totes because I can lift them with these handles. I have some of these that I got at my local grocery store, and I can link some other ones that I've bought online. There are some deep freezer organizers that are out there that are specific for deep freezers, but I didn't know that until you all shared that with me, and I already had these, and these work really well for me. I like to try to keep my deep freezers really organized so that things don't get lost. Now, the reason I use deep freezers and not upright freezers is because this is a huge investment. I will tell you how much I paid for everything and do all the math on it. And the last thing I want is for it to go bad because a freezer door was left open. I have done that before on accident. And so my beef just is gonna be in a deep freezer. So because deep freezers can be tricky to organize, I like this method. The only thing I have in this deep freezer that's not one of these hard-sided totes is this box. And that's because it perfectly fits my ground beef. So the first thing I'm gonna do is remove this ground beef and put in the ground beef I just bought so that I go through this first. So this is the ground beef that I need to get put in here, and I want this to lay flat. So I'm gonna take the time to put one of these in at a time. Ground beef is one of those items that you can request in different quantity packaging. My butcher, I think, will do 1 and 2 pound packages. I like 1 pound because typically most recipes I make call for 1 pound. And if I need more than 1 pound, I can just open 2 packages. But if you have a bigger family and you're always using 2 pounds, typically you can request 2 pounds for one package. And I will link my farmer that I've been buying from. If you are somewhat local, I will link him down below. He is 100% grass-fed, grass-finished. And since I found him, I haven't bought beef from any other farmers. Before I run upstairs and get even more beef, I've got quite a bit of ground beef already in here. I want this tote that is full of steaks so that I can fill this one up. And I am making sure that I keep anything I pull out of the freezer in the same spot, because I want to make sure everything that comes out of the freezer ends up back in the freezer. I have made that mistake before. It's not a pretty mistake. I am so excited about these steaks. They will be thoroughly enjoyed. I put all my steaks in the same spot, even the skirt steak and things like that, even though it's a tougher cut of meat. I just like everything to be organized. Deep freezers run more efficiently when they have more things in them. So this is good because this freezer's been pretty empty for quite some time to get a few more items in it. Let's go fill these totes back up. I'm also going to bring up one thing of this ground beef from last year's, or the last time I bought this beef, because I'm going to make chili tomorrow. So I'm going to bring that up and have that thaw. I'm actually going to prep the chili today so that tomorrow all I have to do is push on, because my parents are coming over to help me with the big harvest. So we're going to have chili over potatoes, baked potatoes, which is going to be delicious. Josh just walked in here. He hadn't seen this yet, and he just said, "Holy cow, original." This is only well, this is not all of it. I've already brought 3 bags worth downstairs. Okay, I'm gonna go downstairs, start unloading the ground beef so that we can keep loading up these bags. Okay, so that's all the ground beef. I gotta get this ground beef back in there. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put this ground beef over here. And this is much more efficient, having someone help bring down the goods, because I can empty it just about as fast as Josh can fill it and bring it back down. Let me get you 2 more bags, Josh.
This.
Okay. 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 Okay, so that's the roasts from last time. So those need to go on top. So down here in this bottom container, I'm gonna go ahead and fill with this year's truck roast. You know what? There's probably soup bones in there. I gotta make sure that that's just roast, because I didn't package that one. These are soup bones. I want these in a different spot than the roasts. I'd be very sad if I, by mistake, thawed soup bones instead of a chuck roast. I have this weird skill that, especially if I keep these organized, I know where things are, so I don't always necessarily look at the packaging. So I would be bound to grab soup bones instead of a chuck roast. Okay. Okay, I got it all organized. So we have our steaks here. I thought a bunch of that stuff down there was chuck roast. It's not, it was soup bones. So in a few months, I'm gonna pull all those soup bones out and make a ton of broth. These are the chuck roasts from the last time. So I only had 3, actually one of those is from this time, and then that bottom whole container is chuck roast. That's why I like these stackable things, because I know those are chuck roast down there. I'll go through these ones first. This right here is the organ meat. We have the liver, the hearts, the fat, and the tongue. Steaks, all the ground beef that we got today, the ground beef that I need to go through from last time. Now, this is interesting. This is a top sirloin roast, and this is a top sirloin tip roast. I did not realize I had these. These are from last time. I have never bought these. So maybe we could try making roast beef out of these. I'm not sure. This right here is my tenderloin from this year. Here is the bacon. I'm gonna get this in here. And then I'm gonna get this rack of ribs my sister gifted me in here. On top of the beef that I don't need to have access to, because I've got the beef right here I have access to. And then on top of the soup bones, I'm gonna go ahead and put this bag of lard that I've already rendered and tallow, because I know I'm not gonna get to the soup bones anytime soon. So anything I need easy access to, steaks, bacon, ground beef we need to use up, and the chuck roast that I need to use up, those are right on top, and I'm not gonna have to move these bags to get access to them. So the last thing going on top are the dog bones. So here is what the freezer looks like now after having a half a cow put into it. And this is a 22, I think it's a 22 cubic foot freezer. It might be a 24. Maybe this is the 22 and this is the 24. I am not sure. We have had this freezer since Josh and I first got married. The first time I bought a quarter of a cow, we bought this freezer for that, and it felt like a very adult purchase. So here is what my other freezer looks like. Now this is mostly pork and chicken and baking goods like almond flour, which we're gonna be using this weekend. I'm actually gonna bring this upstairs, and I'm gonna grab some chicken too, because I'm having a dinner party this weekend and I wanna use, this is the chicken that I helped butcher. Let's see, I want the chicken with the skin on, and we have, I think 10 people coming. I'd have to do the math. Let's see. These are all chicken breasts with the skins off, so I think I'm gonna leave those there. I think I'm actually gonna yes, I'm gonna keep that, and I'm gonna thaw out one of these chickens, and I'm going to break it down. This is another chicken that I helped butcher. I'm going to do a braised chicken dish. I'm gonna do a maple bacon, oh, so I need to grab bacon. A maple bacon braised chicken, and let's see, there's gonna be 8 of us. Okay, with the sides that I'm making, 1 chicken plus 2 chicken breasts should be more than enough. Let's see. I'm gonna grab some bacon. I also have bacon over here. This is extremely fatty bacon, so I think I'm gonna grab the other bacon. This is from a Kuni hog. This is whole wheat flour that I keep in here, and I just take the whole wheat flour out as I need it. So we have breakfast sausage, Italian sausage, the chicken that I helped butcher. We've gone through quite a bit of that, and a ton of lard. All that back there is lard, and that is why I did not take as much of the fat as I could have. So that is that. Let me get a couple more things that I need down here. I think I'm gonna go upstairs, wash my hands, wash the counter, and then I'm gonna come back and we'll finish shopping down here for this week's weekends. I'm gonna do a lot of the prep tomorrow. Dinner party. I think I said my hands are clean, upstairs is clean. I should have probably grabbed this stuff when I was down here, but I think I said I'm prepping for the dinner party tomorrow. I'm not. My parents are coming over to help me do a big harvest. Probably should have, did I just say that? Carry this stuff upstairs when I was upstairs. So I've got to make chili tomorrow for my parents. We're gonna do chili and baked potatoes because they help me harvest the potatoes. So I need to do some shopping for that. And then I also need to do some shopping for this big dinner party that I'm having. I do need a jar of black beans for the chili. I'm gonna need some broth. I think I'm gonna go ahead and grab 2 jars of broth. I'm gonna need just a pint of crushed tomatoes. This is what I did last year. I'm gonna need some macaroni noodles for the dinner party. I am gonna make a caramelized onion baked macaroni. I'm gonna need some garlic. I think I'm gonna grab 2 of these. I'm gonna grab the smaller heads because the larger heads I'm gonna plant for next year. I'm gonna need some onions as well. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember what that is right now. I know I'm gonna need some wine. I'm gonna wait on the wine until later because I'm gonna pick one of my special bottles of wine because it is kind of a celebration. One of Josh's friends just graduated with his master's, and the day after our party, his other friend, it's his birthday, so it's kind of a graduation, birthday, fun get together. It's all of Josh's high school friends, so it'll be nice. So I know I wanna open one of my nicer bottles of wine, but I'm not sure which one yet. I remember what I forgot. It's the potatoes for the baked potatoes, but I'll just go down there in a little bit and we'll call that good. So this is what we need for tomorrow's dinner and for the dinner party, minus the potatoes. I'm gonna grab my sheet of paper where I did all of my math so we can talk about the price that it cost me to buy half a cow at one time. I wanna get all the cozy feels in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and get one of my beeswax candles lit while we talk about buying beef from local farmers. I need to get a lighter because that's how I typically light my candles, is I use a candle to light my candles with my gas stove. Now, something very important to keep in mind when buying meat from local farmers is what the farmer feeds the cow or the pig or the chicken or whatever it might be is really going to affect the cost. So something that's very important to my family is grass-fed, grass-finished. Most cows start their lives on some form of grass, and then they typically end up being grain-finished. There's many reasons why you would choose to have it grass-fed, grass-finished versus grass-fed, grain-finished. And there's very, very, very few regulations on packaging, labeling when it comes to buying beef at grocery stores with labels. Grass-fed can be put on any sort of beef that at some point in their life had grass. There are some downsides to grass-fed, grass-finished, and one of those is typically it costs more for the farmer to raise the cow because they grow slower, and so then it costs the customer more because the farmer needs to recoup that cost. The more time you have to feed the cow and care for the cow, the more expensive it is to raise the cow. And versus grain, the nice thing about grain finished or grain fed is the cow gets fat faster, it's more affordable for the farmer, thus it's more affordable for the consumer, and there tends to be a little bit more marbling with grain fed and finished cows. Now, for the health benefits, I like grass-fed, grass-finished. Years and years and years ago, I did a bunch of, I went down a rabbit hole, and they say that the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids is different in grain-fed, grain-finished versus, or grass-fed, grain-finished versus grass-fed, grass-finished. And those are just things that you as a family get to decide. That's the beauty of, we all get to make these decisions. The more informed we are, the more informed decisions we can make. Some people prefer the flavor of grass-fed, grain-finished. I love the flavor of grass-fed, grass-finished. Some people say it's gamier. I can't really tell the difference. My family enjoys it, so that's what I like to buy. But it is gonna cost a little bit more, and where you live in the country is really gonna affect also the cost when buying meat from local farmers. I live in the Pacific Northwest, where my prices might be a bit higher than someone who lives where cattle is being grown on a larger scale. And so those are just things to keep in mind. I'm not gonna talk about the difference between like the hanging weight cost versus the actual meat cost. All I'm gonna talk about is how much it costs me to get the meat into my freezer. I just put into my freezer a total of 385 pounds. Now, I first paid my farmer to raise the cow. I paid him a total of $1,507.41. Once I pay the farmer, then the cow goes to the butcher, and I have to pay a butcher fee, which is $100 for a half a cow. It's $50 for a quarter cow, and it's $200 for a whole cow. Then I pay the butcher to actually break down the half a cow into its respective parts, and they are the ones that are getting it into what I'm gonna then bring into my kitchen and cook with. I paid them a total, including the butcher fee, $535.83. That pays them for their time of cutting it, grinding it, packaging it, and all of that good stuff. The total that I paid after paying the rancher and the butcher to get that half a beef into my freezer, I paid a total of $2,042.79. So the cool thing that I love about buying beef from a local farmer is I am supporting a local person. I have been buying 99% of my beef. You see that I do buy beef at Costco and the store when I want cuts that I don't have. When I ran out of steaks this summer, I did buy one package of steak at Costco because I hadn't had it in so long. But I do buy the majority of my beef. My dollars go to this one local farmer that I've been supporting for a long time, which I think is so cool. And not only am I supporting him and his family, but I'm also supporting the local butcher shop that I get my beef processed at, which is something super important to me, and I really love it. I'm gonna link localharvest.org down there in the description box for you if you wanna find a local farmer in your area. The way I found my local farmer is just simply Googling grass-fed, grass-finished farmers or ranchers in my area, but you can use Facebook Marketplace, you can use Craigslist, all sorts of different things. And also localharvest.org is a free nonprofit website that tries to help customers find farmers and farmers find customers. And you can find different things like dairy and produce producers and things like that on that website. So friend, thank you for coming along this journey with me of filling my freezer with this beef. This is something that I just get so much joy out of when I can support a local farmer and try to provide my family with the best quality that we can afford. It does take budgeting a little bit different for our groceries, as we kind of have this separate part of our budget where we can save and know that every year or two, usually it's every year because I do buy pork, and that's another big chunk of, that takes quite a bit in order to fill our freezer with local pork. And so it's just planning a little bit different. So if you want to try doing this, I highly encourage it. I think that you will really enjoy it. The biggest tip though is requesting cuts that your family already likes. Especially when it comes to pork, the only two cuts I really get now, or three I should say, are bacon and sausage. I get breakfast sausage and Italian sausage because that's what I go through. And so that's what I request. I used to get all the fancy cuts and we just don't eat them very often. And so it's not worth filling my freezer with those and then having them be forgotten. So I hope you found this interesting to see kind of the process of what it takes to fill your freezer with half a cow. The process of, you purchase it from the farmer, it goes to the butcher, you give the butcher your butcher instructions, and then you get to bring it home and enjoy it. And I will leave the link to localharvest.org. Don't forget to just do some simple Googling in your area if you want to find farmers in your area. And the Butcher Boys or Butcher Guys video on more in-depth details on the different cuts. That would have been super helpful when I first started this. So if you're interested in that, that will be linked down below. So thank you for being here. If you want to watch some more of my videos and you want to see how I cook with all of this beautiful beef, I'll put some videos here you can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.